You'd think a quiet suburb would be the perfect place to raise a disabled child. That's what I thought, too, until the day my daughter was accused of stealing. Not by some stranger, but by our neighbor. A woman named Karen who wore pearls like armor and smiled like a knife. I'm Mark Dawson, just a regular single dad trying to keep things together after my wife passed. My daughter Emily is 10 years old. She's sweet, curious, and bound to a wheelchair. We moved to Maple Glen for peace. Instead, we found judgment hiding behind white picket fences. It all started small: HOA notes, nasty looks, snide comments. But one day, Karen crossed a line no one comes back from. She framed Emily for a crime she didn't commit. That's when I made a call. Not to the cops. To my sister. Because what Karen didn't know is, my sister works for the FBI. When Emily and I first moved into Maple Glen, it looked like the perfect fresh start. The homes were all painted in warm pastel tones, lawns trimmed to perfection, and neighbors waved with polite, distant smiles. We moved into the last house on Rosewood Lane, small, tidy, and just enough for the two of us. I built a wooden ramp the first weekend we arrived. Emily's wheelchair couldn't manage the front steps, and I wanted her to have independence. The ramp wasn't fancy, just safe and functional. That's when I saw her, Karen. She stood across the street, arms folded, lips pursed like she'd just bitten into a lemon. She wore a beige sweater and pearls, even though it was 80 degrees. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just stared. The next morning, I found an HOA violation notice taped to our door. Unauthorized structure. Ramp not pre-approved. Fines pending. That was just the beginning. Emily loved sitting on our porch, watching birds and humming little tunes. But Karen started complaining about excessive noise. Then came more notes about visible medical equipment, a cluttered garage, and unattractive therapy accessories. She even complained that the wheels on Emily's chair left faint streaks on the sidewalk. I paid the fines. I fixed what I could. I didn't want trouble, not for Emily's sake. She'd been through enough already. But Karen didn't stop. She'd walk her dog past our house twice a day, scowling as she passed. If Emily waved, Karen would look away like she didn't exist. One afternoon, Emily asked me, "Daddy, did I do something wrong?" Her eyes were wide, her voice barely above a whisper. That crushed me. I told her no, of course not. That some people are just mean because they don't understand. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about understanding. It was about control. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was using them as weapons. The other neighbors saw it but stayed silent. Maybe they were scared of her. Maybe they didn't care. But I cared. And every time I saw Emily's smile dim just a little bit more, something inside me clenched tighter. I didn't know it yet, but Karen was just getting started. And the worst was yet to come. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where the sun makes everything look golden and perfect. The Maple Glen Community Center was buzzing. Kids were laughing, parents were chatting, and folding tables lined the main hall, each covered with cupcakes, crafts, and charity jars. It was the annual fundraiser for local families with special needs, Emily's favorite event. She had made little handmade bookmarks with stickers and glitter, proudly placing them in a neat row on our table. I'd helped her paint a sign that read, "Made with Love by Emily." She even brought her pink piggy bank to donate, her idea. "Other kids need help too," she said. By noon, her bookmarks were selling fast. People smiled, dropped coins in the jar, and told her how talented she was. Emily beamed. For the first time in weeks, she looked like the girl I remembered, the one before Karen. But then, just as I stepped away to grab drinks for us, I heard the commotion. "Stop her! She was stealing from the donation table," someone shouted. I turned around and saw Karen storming across the room, holding Emily's pink piggy bank in one hand and Emily's backpack in the other. Emily sat in her wheelchair, frozen, her face pale with confusion. This was in her bag. Karen barked. She took the donation money. I saw her. The room went silent. My feet couldn't move fast enough. I got to Emily and knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, what happened?" She shook her head, eyes wide with tears. I didn't. I don't know how it got there. Karen's voice rose. She probably thought no one would notice. Poor little girl, right? Can't walk, so she must be innocent. But she's not. I stood, facing her. You're accusing a 10-year-old in a wheelchair of theft? She had the money. Karen snapped. What more do you need? The event organizer reluctantly called the local police. Not knowing my background, the responding officer followed protocol. They didn't arrest Emily, but they did take a report. They wrote down everything Karen said. Emily sobbed the whole way home. That night, she couldn't sleep. Daddy, am I a bad person? She asked, voice trembling. I sat on her bed and held her hand. No, Emily. You're the kindest person I know, and we're going to prove it. But I knew we were up against more than just mean words now. Karen had escalated. She had crossed a line no decent human being should ever even consider. The next morning, I poured myself a strong cup of coffee and stared at my phone. Then I did what I should have done weeks ago. I called my sister, Renee, and that's when everything started to change. Renee Dawson wasn't the type of person you called unless you wanted results. She was calm, methodical, and had a stare that could freeze a liar mid-sentence. My big sister had always looked out for me when we were kids, but after college, she joined the FBI and climbed the ranks fast. Now one of their top cybercrime investigators. When she picked up the phone, I didn't even get through half the story before she said, I'll be there in 6 hours. True to her word, by nightfall, Renee pulled into my driveway in a black SUV, wearing a navy blue blazer and a look that meant business. She didn't hug me, didn't need to. She went straight to Emily, crouched beside her, and smiled. Hi, superstar. I'm Aunt Renee. I hear you've been dealing with a real-life villain. Emily nodded shyly, gripping my hand. After tucking Emily in, I gave Renee everything, the HOA notices, pictures of the ramp, audio recordings of Karen's yelling, and my own notes. But it was the fundraiser setup that caught her interest the most. She framed her, Renee said flatly. There's no doubt in my mind. She started digging immediately. I watched her work the way I'd seen detectives move through crime scenes. Quiet, focused, no wasted motion. She asked for any surveillance in the community center. I told her the HOA claimed the cameras had been down for maintenance. Convenient, she said, tapping her keyboard faster. But Renee had tools they didn't know about. Within an hour, she found evidence Karen had logged into the HOA's internal system the night before the fundraiser. She had administrative access, and she disabled the building's cameras remotely. Not only that, but emails revealed Karen had been complaining about Emily for weeks to other board members, calling her a distraction and sympathy magnet. She planted the piggy bank in Emily's bag, Renee said. I can't prove it yet, but I will. Then Renee found a neighbor's smart doorbell footage from across the street. It showed Karen walking from her car to the community center just before the fundraiser, carrying both a backpack and a pink piggy bank. The same ones that ended up discovered on Emily's table. Renee smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was sharp, dangerous, the kind that only shows up when justice is coming. She wanted to ruin a little girl's life, Renee said. Let's make sure she ruins her own instead. Renee didn't believe in waiting around. We're not just gathering evidence, she said the next morning. We're flipping the chessboard. She called up an old contact, another FBI agent who specialized in covert audio recording, and within hours, a tiny lapel mic was wired into Renee's blouse. I'm going to give Karen a chance to hang herself, she said. All she has to do is talk. The plan was simple. Renee would pose as a concerned community consultant, working with the HOA board on a public relations cleanup. She emailed Karen using a generic address, offering a meeting to help improve her standing in the neighborhood after the unfortunate misunderstanding. Karen took the bait. The meeting was set for Tuesday afternoon on Karen's porch. Renee wore a conservative pantsuit, carried a tablet, and pretended to scribble notes while her phone, placed discreetly on the table, recorded everything. Ms. Mitchell, she began. As you know, the incident involving the girl has caused quite a stir. Karen rolled her eyes. The little faker? Please, that wheelchair is the only reason anyone even likes her. That and her sad little eyes. Renee didn't flinch. Some people think the accusations were excessive. Karen laughed. Oh please, I gave that brat a lesson. Her daddy's too soft, always acting like she's some fragile flower. If she can't handle the heat, she shouldn't be at events like that. Renee blinked slowly. Did you plant the piggy bank in her bag? Karen hesitated for just a second, then smiled, smug and stupid. Let's just say I made sure people saw the truth. And if they didn't, I helped them get there. These people are so easy to manipulate, especially when the kid looks like a victim just by existing. That was enough. Renee leaned back, voice calm. Well, Ms. Mitchell, you've said more than enough, and I'm going to need you to stay seated. Karen looked confused. Excuse me? Renee reached into her blazer, pulled out her badge, and flipped it open. Renee Dawson, FBI. And you just confessed to fabricating evidence, targeting a disabled child, and obstructing community surveillance systems. Congratulations. Karen's jaw dropped. You tricked me? No, Renee said. You tricked yourself. You're just not very good at it. Karen stood up, knocking her chair back. You can't do this. I already did. Renee walked off the porch as Karen stood there sputtering, her face pale. The doorbell camera from across the street caught everything. That evening, Renee handed the footage and audio to the local police. No ambiguity, she told them. Full confession, on record. They filed the paperwork that night. Karen had no idea what was coming next. But we did. And for the first time since we'd moved to Maple Glen, I finally felt like justice wasn't just an idea. It was a promise. By the end of the week, police knocked on Karen Mitchell's door with a warrant in hand. The arrest was swift. No yelling, no theatrics. Just handcuffs, silence, and the stunned look of a woman who never thought her lies would catch up to her. The neighbors watched from windows and porches as she was escorted down her perfect front steps, the very ones she used to lecture everyone from. The news spread fast. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. The community center was packed, standing room only. People who once nodded quietly at Karen now stood up, emboldened. Stories spilled out, fines for flower pots, threats over fence heights, kids banned from playing chalk on the sidewalks. And then came the video. Renee had prepared everything. The audio recording, the doorbell footage, even a timeline of Karen's digital sabotage. She let it play for all to hear. Karen's voice, cold and unapologetic, echoed through the room. These people are so easy to manipulate. Gasps filled the air. The head of the HOA board, a man who once cowered in Karen's presence, looked visibly shaken. We failed this neighborhood, he said. And we failed Emily. Then he turned to Renee. What do we do now? Renee didn't hesitate. Start by removing Karen from every position of power. Then re-examine every fine, every warning she issued. If you really want a clean house, start there. A unanimous vote removed Karen from the board. Her name was erased from the HOA roster that night. But that wasn't the end. Karen was charged with multiple offenses. Filing a false police report, falsifying community records, harassment of a minor, and tampering with public surveillance systems. She was released on bail, but this time her smug smile was gone. Everywhere she went, people turned away. And Emily? She finally got her name cleared. The community center put out a public apology. The fundraiser board gave her a special thank you certificate. Even kids at school started calling her the brave girl. She smiled again, not just a little, fully, freely. And for me, seeing that, it meant more than any court verdict ever could. But Karen's reckoning wasn't over. Not yet. The days after Karen's fall felt like a long exhale. The tension that had clung to Maple Glen like thick fog slowly lifted. Emily started going outside more. She'd sit on the porch, sketching with her colored pencils while the neighborhood kids cautiously began to come back around. One afternoon, a boy named Caleb brought over a soccer ball and asked, "Want to play catch?" Emily lit up. I watched from the window, my chest tight with quiet gratitude. Renee stayed with us for a few more days. She helped repaint Emily's ramp, turning it into a cheerful splash of color: turquoise, lavender, and soft pink. The neighborhood kids joined in, painting stars and hearts and writing messages like, "You are loved," and "Supergirl lives here." It wasn't just paint. It was a statement. The HOA board, now restructured, stopped sending ridiculous notices. Instead, they offered to help fund a new therapy chair for Emily using leftover community event proceeds. I almost refused, then remembered that sometimes healing means letting others show up, too. Mrs. Johnson, our elderly neighbor, dropped off a warm pie one evening. "For the little hero," she said. "And the big one, too." Emily laughed more. Her drawings grew brighter. Her confidence returned, inch by inch. But the moment that will stay with me forever came one night as we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip low. Emily leaned her head against my shoulder and whispered, "Dad, I'm not scared anymore." I wrapped my arm around her and kissed her forehead. "You don't ever have to be again." And I meant it, because this wasn't just about Karen. It was about reclaiming peace, rebuilding trust, and reminding my daughter that no matter what shadows try to creep in, she will always have the light. In the end, Karen thought she could bully a child into silence. She thought power meant control and cruelty meant strength. But she forgot something: my daughter isn't alone. She has me, and she has an aunt who wears a badge and doesn't blink in the face of injustice. Karen framed my disabled daughter for theft, but she didn't count on the truth. She didn't count on the community waking up. And she sure didn't count on my sister, an FBI agent with a heart of steel. Justice wasn't just served. It was delivered by blood. And we never looked back.